It's not often you see a group of teens taking on issues like homelessness, drug and alcohol use, and dealing with day-to-day stresses. But that's just what the Barnstable Youth Commission is doing. This year, the group of 7 students and their adult advisors planned a 2-day-long summit geared toward education and prevention. We take you inside the summit and give you a look at the Barnstable Youth Commission and their efforts.
Good evening. My name is Brendan Clark. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Youth Commission, and I'm here with Cheryl Bartlett, the Executive Director of Substance Abuse and Prevention at Cape Cod Healthcare. Ms. Bartlett, what do you think is so important about the youth getting involved in all of these drug-related issues here on Cape Cod? What do you think is so essential about them offering their voice on the matter?
Well, I think that anytime you can take youth and have leaders amongst the youth themselves, that kids tend to listen to youth more than they listen to adults. And so I think in the issue of substance abuse, most kids aren't using drugs and alcohol. And so if we could have a conversation about that it's sort of cool to not use drugs and alcohol, instead of focusing all our energy on what's negative about drugs and alcohol, what are the positive things that youth can do in their lives?
So during your time at the Office of Public Health, what do you think were some of your proudest initiatives, concerning substance abuse and drug-related issues?
So a year ago, Governor Patrick and I declared a public health emergency on the use of opiates and overdoses related to opiate use. And it really created a national conversation, because what we first did right out of the chute was to ban a new opiate drug that was coming to market. A drug called Zohydro had been reviewed by the FDA Scientific Advisory Committee, and 11-2, they rejected this new drug to come to market, yet the FDA approved it. It was a very pure opiate that had a high risk for fatality if somebody crushed it and snorted it or injected it, because it was a long-acting opiate. And so the risk of overdose death was enormous, and the idea that we already had an opiate crisis and we were bringing another drug to market just didn't make any sense to us. Of course, we were sued by the pharmaceutical company, and I guess I'm really proud that I stood up to a pharmaceutical company to say we don't really need a new problem in our pharmaceutical availability of these kinds of drugs. But in addition to that, we looked at other regulations and policies that could really bring safe prescribing. We put a highlight on the safe prescribing of opiates. About 75% of people that go on to have a heroin addiction start their addiction with a prescription opiate that's in someone's medicine cabinet. Wasn't prescribed for them. So talking about how do we reduce the amount of prescriptions and bring awareness to people that their own medicine cabinets may be a risk for their child to use substances. And so I think that by creating, we were the only state, the only governor to declare a public health emergency of this sort, and it created a national conversation that I think has really helped us put attention to this critical issue.
So what do you think are some new initiatives that the youth can take and that the adults can take to really tackle this issue and work on it to reduce it here in the community?
Well, again, first of all, I think the awareness of the risk of using a prescription opiate as the path to heroin. I don't think when somebody takes a pill that's legal, they make the connection to heroin. So I think the dangers of prescription opiates as that pathway. And I think it's always important for youth to take responsibility for themselves. And so I think the fact that we have a Barnstable Youth Commission, to me, is a model for every community in the Cape, that we should bring youth into the conversation. Often adults try to figure out what to do to help youth, and I think that not having the voice of youth at the table is really unfortunate.
So what do you think is really the point that we should focus on? Should it be prevention, or should it be treatment, or a mixture of both?
Well, I think with what we're reading every day in the papers about overdose deaths, we obviously, for families that are struggling with this addiction, we want to help them to save their loved ones and give them an opportunity to get into treatment. But those people are always going to struggle with that chronic disease that they have. And I think at the same time we try to find help for families who are having this problem, that we need to get to the next generation of youth and really get them to understand what choices they're making and where that consequences in their life might take them.
So at your new position here at Cape Cod Healthcare, what have you already started to work on, or what projects are in the works in terms of combating, substance issues?
Well, one of the things we're really trying to do is bring everybody together. I think if we look around, everybody's popping up with a new task force or a group of people who want to try to address this. And while I see that as a positive thing, I also see that as creating more complications because there's more people trying to do something. We're giving different messages. So coming together and creating a collaborative approach is important, and the county is taking a leadership role to bring everybody together through a grant that they got from the Department of Public Health. And hopefully by June, we'll have a plan that's a regional plan that we all can find something in it that we can agree to do that's moving us all in the same direction. And then in the short term, while we're waiting for that plan to come out, I've been really trying to focus on education and awareness across the Cape and sponsoring events like this to inform youth, inform parents, inform the community of how they can get involved, and to understand the disease of substance use disorders and opiate addiction in particular. So we will be sponsoring some forums in May across the Cape to actually highlight recovery. Because I think a lot of the news we read is about the people that aren't making it, but there are also many, many people that are living a life of recovery that we should celebrate. And then we are looking at working with the YMCA to create a Young Achievers program here on Cape Cod that focuses on high-risk youth that are already finding themselves going down a bad path in school, and hopefully we can give them a new direction in life. And we're going to also do opiate prescribing trainings for physicians across the Cape so that they understand how to manage pain and assess people for the risk that they might have for being addicted to substances so that they make a better treatment plan. And what else are we doing? Just a lot of little things like that in the meantime while we're waiting for this bigger plan to come out.
So if you could say one thing to someone who might be suffering from substance abuse or someone who might be considering going down that path, what do you think that would be?
Well, I would say never give up hope on yourself that you can get treatment and you can live a life of sobriety, and that to find someone that they trust to help them go in that direction. I really think people that are in recovery can be really good mentors for people that are trying to be in recovery. So find a sponsor, find a support group, find a supportive person in your life that can try to help you make those changes.
Thank you. I want to thank you for coming here to let us interview you this evening, and thank you for funding this event. I hope we can work together in the future.
Great.
So you guys worked with the DA's office. How long have you guys worked individually there?
I'm in my 28th year in the district attorney's office. I'm the first assistant district attorney, and I've been that since 2003. Prior to that, I worked in Superior Court as an assistant DA, and then in district court as an assistant DA.
I've been with the office, it'll be 10 years in September since I got out of law school. And I worked in the Barnstable, Falmouth, Orleans, Nantucket district courts, and now I'm assigned as the prosecutor for the juvenile courts.
Okay, so what would you guys say are some of the biggest challenges facing the youth under 16 today?
I think some of the things that we see, it's the drugs and the alcohol, and the availability of it and the use of it and the problems that stem from it. In addition, another big issue is technology and the use of that, Facebook and Twitter and the instant messaging, email blogs, all the different applications that the kids can use that they don't understand can have ramifications, and the fact that, when you send something, you can never get it back. The internet is there, you really can't delete things. So I see a lot of things coming from that.
And I think that today's youth are forced to grow up quicker.
Yeah.
And I think the technology and the speed that life seems to be going for kids nowadays has a critical effect on how it is that they interact socially, and the problems that are out there, and the potential for them falling into those problems. And I think that that's a real challenge for today's youth, dealing with the pressures of society, whether it be schools, further education, and the temptations of the bad stuff that's out there. I think that's a challenge that I see.
Mm. So how would you guys say the DA's office addresses these challenges?
Well, there's our traditional role in the DA's office is to prosecute criminal cases. So when it gets to the point where activity crosses the line and becomes criminal, then we prosecute that, and people are held accountable with a variety of different sentencing options. When it's really bad, then it's prison. When it's not that bad, it becomes juvenile diversion programs and things like that. So we have that aspect of it, is the pure prosecution. The other aspect of it is prevention and that type of positive messaging that we get involved in. And Eileen, you want to talk a little bit about what we do?
Yeah, we actually, myself and the rest of the community team, Bill Burke, Deb Martin, Kathy, Nora, Patty, we go out and do different things. One of the things we do is we actually do presentations at the school in regards to things like the cyber issues, and tell the kids, this is the type of behavior that could get you in trouble. You may think it's harmless, you may think it's no big deal, but you in fact can be brought to court for this. So, don't send things like this, don't do things like this. In addition, we also, the team goes out and we meet with all the schools and we hear about what's going on in the schools, what are the problems, and how can we help, education-wise, and targeting our help towards an individual who may need help, or does the school itself need help as a whole with dealing with an issue. So we do things like that.
Awesome. Could you give some information regarding the drug court program?
The drug court. I was assigned to the drug court, I think, for 5 years. It's a very unique program because it's run through the courthouse. It's run by the judge and the district attorney's office. It's a collaborative event with the probation department, some treatment providers and things like that for offenders who need that type of structured help. And it meets weekly at the courthouse. So every week, the members of the drug court, then there are different phases, phase 1, 2, and 3. I think it's phase 1 meets every week. And they come in every week, and the individuals tell us about how they're doing. What's their progress? What was the good part of the week? What was the bad part of their week? And it's a real structured accountability, but it puts all the resources in the same place. We do a team meeting ahead of time where we talk about how was everybody's week, what's going on, is this person struggling, do they need additional help, what can we do? And when people reoffend, we deal with that, and how can we deal with that? The goal is to give that kind of wrap around everybody at the same table, trying to take a look at it as a person as a whole and help them with their issues to get them so that they're no longer with the court, and they proceed through the phases and they have graduations. And I'll tell you that the graduations were some of the most powerful things, because it was people that you watched who actually had been arrested and were at the House of Correction, and their only hope was the drug court, and that they went all the way through and succeeded. And it's amazing because I haven't done it in a few years now, and I see people who I had in drug court who are now clean and sober and working and doing well, and they'll stop me and tell me they're doing so well, this is what they've done, this is how the drug court helped them. And they don't see me, the prosecutor, and go, oh, I'm not talking to her. They actually come up. I had somebody stop me. He's like, don't you recognize me? And I'm like, no. He told me who he was, and I said, oh my God, it's so good to see you. And he's like, it helped, it really helped. So it's a great program that the court has.
Right. How did you guys experience tonight's program?
I think it was fantastic. It's great that you as a group are getting together to work from a youth's perspective, to focus on issues and deal with it. And I think the speaker brought up some really good points, and I think that it's interesting, that question about if you had a magic wand and you could fix it, and it was to straighten out the adults first, because that's where the problem starts. And I think that, those are powerful messages that I think adults tend to lay the blame on anything but themselves when it comes to drug issues and youth behavior and things like that, when in fact we as adults have as much of a responsibility of changing it and having the impact that we do. So I think it's great to get people together and talk about these types of things. I think the movie that we saw was very moving, and it gets back to the drug court that we're involved in. Whenever there's criminal activity that's caused by the addiction or the search for drugs, then the real root of that is the addiction, and until you can address that, then you're not going to be able to move forward for that individual. And I think this was a good program.
Something that I thought was really interesting. I had heard all the facts and things that she talked about in regards to the longer you can prolong somebody's use, the less likely they are to be an addict. But I had never heard it described as the fact that addiction is a pediatric illness. And I think it's a great way to describe it to parents and to young people alike, that alcohol may be something that you're going to use at some point, probably is going to be when you're an adult, when it's appropriate. And the reason is exactly that, because if you can get through your teenage year, most of your teenage years, to being 18, 19, 21, without having used alcohol, without having used drugs, you're much less likely to end up with a problem. And describing it as a pediatric illness, I think it kind of took me as a way to go, that really makes sense, and that's a really great way to explain it, that if you can avoid it for all these years, you're going to be fine. And I think from what I've seen from the people that I know and the stories I've heard from people in drug court and the juveniles that I have, the ones who succeed and the ones who end up going to district court, it makes sense that the children who started with addiction issues at 13, 14, 15 are going to still have those same ones, and the ones that we've been able to get and help and divert earlier are going to do better. So I thought that was really powerful in the way she described all that.
All right. Thank you guys so much for your time tonight.
Oh,
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Afternoon. I'm here with Patricia Mikarostis from the Director of Prevention for Gosnold. So what do you think some of the strongest prevention programs that Gosnold runs are, and how they really help the youth of the town of Barnstable?
Well, one of the biggest programs that we have right now in prevention is we have clinicians actually based inside the schools. We have 2 clinicians at the high school. We have a clinician at Barnstable Intermediate School, and we also have a clinician at Hyannis West Elementary School. And they can provide direct clinical services to the students in need, and also, with issues with themselves, mental health issues, substance abuse issues, their own, their peers, their family, and such. So that's we are in 11 schools now on the Cape, and again, we have 3 full-time people in Barnstable.
So what do you think about the balance between prevention and treatment? Is it equally matched at this point in time, or do you think one kind of takes precedence over the other?
Well, I think people are starting to see that, like with any other chronic condition, addiction is a chronic disease. It's a chronic condition like hypertension, like diabetes. So the earlier we start preventing it, young people are predisposed. There are genetic factors that play into addiction. There are environmental factors, peer pressure and such. So the earlier we start to intervene and screen with young people, even at the elementary level, the less likely they are to develop an addiction. So I think there's a lot of emphasis right now on early intervention and prevention, much more so hopefully stopping them from needing treatment.
So what do you think is perhaps your proudest achievement with your work at Gosnold? What do you really look back on and think was really good for the community?
I think there's no one individual thing, but even today at the youth summit we had a 7th grader come up to us and tell us that she's seeing one of our clinicians in the school and what an impact that has made to her, and the clinician has made her comfortable and given her somebody to talk to and helped her resolve some of the issues in her life. And so to hear that on an individual basis is important, But to know that Gosnell is in the community and that we serve a variety of people from all walks of life, it's very rewarding that people are becoming more educated about addiction as a chronic condition and not as a character flaw. So that's very inspiring too, to be part of the movement. We have the political will that we never had before to put some focus on addiction prevention, intervention, and recovery, not just on treatment, not just on putting people in beds if they need treatment, but what do we do before, during, and then after treatment. So that's probably my proudest achievement.
So, in your experience, what do you think? Where do you think the age really starts? Is it as young, like 11 or 10, or could it be as, later into the teenage years? What do you think is the real starting point of an addiction? Or
I think the average age of onset in our state and in our area is between 12 and 13, and generally it starts with alcohol. Mostly coming from peers and sometimes starting in the home. They've seen the behavior at home, or they're receiving pressure from their peers. So generally it starts very young, and I think if we start educating younger, as they did with smoking, with cigarettes at the elementary level, I think we can start educating kids earlier, and that just because it's legal, like cigarettes, I mean, alcohol is a very dangerous drug, particularly if you're young. There's an effect on the brain chemistry. Your brain's not developed until you're 26, so alcohol has an impact on your brain, as does marijuana, in terms of the brain developing. So to start to educate kids as part of the science curriculum, rather than maybe from a standpoint of, just say no to drugs, but to do it from a scientific point of view.
So what are some initiatives that Gosnold is taking kind of in the future here? Like, where do you guys think you're headed in terms of treatment, prevention?
I think we're headed towards developing earlier screening methods with the schools, again at the elementary level. Education for parents. A lot of parents are confused on how to talk to their children. When should they begin to talk to their children? What ages are too young? What do they do if they find drugs or alcohol? What's normal? What's experimentation? Versus, when does it turn to be a problem? So I think parent education is an important piece, and I think intervening earlier with the students. We now do pre-prom assemblies in many towns on the Cape, where we have speakers speak to the parents of prom goers, and many schools have made that mandatory for parents to attend in order to get the prom tickets. So and some of them also require the students to come to hear talks about, again, the dangers of drinking and driving. So all of those kinds of initiatives I think help educate the community and the different sectors, whether it be parents, kids, the school. So
how do you think the Youth Commission and Gosnold can work together in the future? Are there any things that you see that would be great to have a youthful voice on?
Absolutely. I think that's key, having a youthful voice on any and all of the activities that we do. How can we improve? What is the need? What is the kids' perspective on what we're doing? Does it help? What can we do better? Hearing the voices from the young people, the ones that are in the schools that have a pulse on what's happening. We hear so many different things. Is it peer pressure? Is it how they feel about themselves? Is it underlying depression and anxiety? What drives kids initially to want to use a substance? And then how do we take that information and use it to drive our programs and our services to help the kids? So I absolutely see a role for the members of the Youth Commission. Any way they want to help. We have meetings. We have steering committee meetings for a lot of our prevention activities. We would absolutely welcome any members of the commission.
Well, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us.
Hi, I'm Matt Hersey of the Barnstable Youth Commission, and I'm here with Melissa Ventola of Big Brother, Big Sister. Hi, Melissa.
Hi.
Just to start off, what do you think the biggest problems the youth face today in the town of Barnstable?
I think growing up on the Cape, I think that it's not always a kid-friendly community. There's not a lot to do sometimes on your own as a kid, it's harder to find, so it's easy to stray into maybe less productive ways to spend your time. It's easy to kind of go down a wrong path, get into trouble, just because there's not a lot of outlets. And are free resources for kids, and it's hard to get connected sometimes to your peers or other responsible adults in the community, just because even though it's small, we're still all kind of spread out, and so it's hard to get sort of outside of your town or your neighborhood, depending on what part of the Cape you live in. We don't have like public transportation like other people do, so you can't just go sometimes even to the library because you can't get there. So I think just finding resources for children to use in a positive way is sometimes difficult on the Cape, and especially now that the substance abuse is kind of on the rise, that's a really easy thing for kids to get involved in. Unfortunately, it's too easy. Yeah, right. So I think that's a huge problem. So we need to kind of show them a different way to go.
So how is Big Brother Big Sister addressing this problem?
So our program provides mentoring for children in the community. We enroll kids in our program between the ages of 7 and 12 and give them a responsible, caring adult that they hang out with a couple times a month in the community. And so they're able to see firsthand someone that's living here, making it work. It doesn't mean that the adult did all the right things at all the right times in their lives, but they're still a responsible mentor for the kids. And it's nice to have someone outside of your family sometimes to talk to, because you might not feel comfortable talking to your parents about certain things like drugs and alcohol and the things that kids face growing up. So you kind of have someone different to talk to and their perspective, and just someone to lean on and have a good support system, because not everyone has that at home for various reasons. So we're just trying to provide another outlet for kids to have a champion behind them, and show them a good way of living on the Cape and different things, and to show them that the Cape can really be fun, and you can make good decisions and make it work. So mentoring. We're all about the mentoring.
So how would a kid 7 to 12, how would they contact you guys if they were interested?
They should have their parent or guardian contact us. We have our website, www.bbbscci.org, or just Google Big Brothers Big Sisters of Cape Cod and the Islands, and we'll pop right up. We have a Facebook page, so they can always send us a message, and we can give them the links to pass on to their family. Their family does have to enroll them in the program, since the mentors would be going to their homes and taking them out, and obviously the parents have to be okay with that. So they should just poke and bug their parents and say, hey, is this something I can be a part of? Because it is a free resource for families, and we serve all of Cape Cod and Martha's Vineyard. So we encourage people to reach out to us, and if we can't help you, we can hopefully get you involved in somewhere else that can, especially if you're not in that particular age group. We still can hopefully find something for you to do, because there's a lot that we can do on the Cape to help each other out too.
Yeah. All right, awesome. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for putting this on.
Yeah.